It's a cute little baby! In this Polymer Clay Baby Dragon tutorial, you'll discover how to make the baby dragon body part, surprising dragon eye options, how to add super cool dragon scale techniques to the tummy and the back, secrets on making baby size sculptures strong so the wee one doesn't break. We don't want that. Getting your baby dragon in a cute position that expresses its personality, including cool objects. Smush them together and give birth to a Polymer Clay baby. So much fun. Feel free to select any colour clay that appeals to you and craft your Polymer Clay baby dragon in a style that suits your preferences. And explore other tutorials and time lapses also featuring baby dragons on this channel. Hello and a warm welcome. My name is Mel, the sculptress and artist from Two Feathers Gallery in Australia. Have you ever felt really frustrated in a tutorial because you just felt there wasn't enough information to create an exact replica of a sculpture? Fear not, that won't happen here, my friends, as this tutorial is specifically designed to make it easy for beginners. What? I have designed it in a way that there is no guesswork. All the measurements are there down to the millimeter. If you follow it step by step, you'll have your own dragon baby in no time. I encourage you to make your baby dragon in your own style and even make up an origin story. Give your little baby dragon superpowers or props or crystals that make it even more special and magical. You'll be learning new skills as we go along, right? So please subscribe and like this video. You'll learn step-by-step easy tips and techniques that you can apply to all of your Polymer Clay projects. Please watch until the end of the video where I will reveal some really cool dragon wing options. Let's get this baby dragon underway right now. Baby. And we're off and we're rolling a tail, and it's roughly 70 millimeters in length. Just smooth out any blemishes with your fingertips until you're happy, and we're going to roll out this little matchstick head type shape. Not sure how else to describe it. It's roughly about 40 millimeters in length. You'll see it in just a moment. Here we are. And this super flexi wire is super handy for armatures, so we're going to use that in the tail just to make it nice and strong. You can straighten the wire with your fingers, or if you've got a wire straightener, that really helps. Grab your wire and poke it into the tail and try to keep it nice and straight. And we're aiming to make our way all the way down to the end of the tail. You can see a little bit of it just started to poke out there. I pull it back, adjusting the angle and then pushing it through again, and you may need to do this a few times. If you like, there's a ball tail method that's shown in the top left-hand corner, which you could find a little bit easier. So by all means, give that one a whirl. Just keep pushing all the way down. And the reason why I add armature to my sculptures is that I'm going to sell this in my Etsy shop, and I want to make sure that it's really strong, and I know that I'm going to put a crystal in the tail later as well. So you can neaten it up a little bit by rolling it, and if the wire comes out of the end, you can always just squidge it over a little bit with some clay and roll it again to fix it up. No worries. Yeah, nobody likes an exposed tail. Give it a little snip with the wire cutters, and you want to measure probably how far you want it to go into the body so it doesn't stick out the other side. I'm not going to show you all the messy bits, it's off camera at the moment. I've got a toothpick. You could use a finger or a brush, whatever you've got, just bang it onto the wire at super speed if you can, and pop it into the body. I'm joining it with a needle tool, and the tail looks a little bit thin, and I ended up actually bulking it out. You'll see that a little bit later. We'll build it up. If you build it, they will come. And it doesn't have to be too fancy pants, just until you're happy with it. We're moving on to the polymer clay dragon's chest, and this polymer clay has been put through a very thin setting in the pasta machine. If you don't have a pasta machine or you're not sure how to roll thin sheets of clay by hand, you can simply click on the link below in the description box. And we're going to chop out a little curve shape like so. You can use a flexible blade to do this, otherwise a cutting knife like an X-Acto knife. I've got a texture sponge and I'm just pressing that lightly onto it and removing it from the tile with a rigid tissue blade. If you don't have a tissue blade, you could choose to work on a sheet of baking paper and just peel it off that way. And he looks very royal, I think, with this red and gold. Kind of cool. Lightly press the chest piece on and all the way down to the bottom of his bot. And I'm just marking out guidelines with an arrowhead tool and then cutting a piece out with a cutting blade. And I'm ready to make some marks with a arrowhead tool, and you'll see that the spaces between the scales will grow from smaller to larger as I go down the body. I'm trying to start in the middle of the chest and keep it on a little bit of a diagonal as I go down. And keep on cruising down the middle of the body, and the marks are getting slightly further apart as we move further down. On the other side as well, we'll mirror it on that other side as we go. You could always leave it plain if you wanted. I'm really, really happy with this effect for my little dragon though. I think it's time to have a look at his butt. What I like to do with the butt is just kind of tap it gently on the table, just flatten the butt a little bit more. Next, we'll make the legs by rolling a larger ball, roughly 25 millimeters in diameter, cutting it in half, and then roll those into balls as well. So we have two smaller balls of equal proportions. Give them both a teeny weeny little roll, just like that. Position them on either side of the body, and once they're in position, give them a squish and a little smush, and maybe a few more squishes. And use any kind of modeling tool that you prefer to blend them securely to your baby dragon's bod. I hope you're doing very well. It's time to make some little footsies now. Roll a ball measuring 10 millimeters in diameter. Then cut it in half and roll it into two separate balls, kind of similar to what we did before. One of the balls you can roll with your index finger into a teardrop shape and then give it a little squish on top. Mark out and cut where you want the toes to be. I've got 3 toes. You may want more, and the next bit might be a little bit of a fiddly thing. It takes a bit of practice and getting used to, so the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And it's just taking your time, pinching and pushing the clay around to round out and clean up the edges of those toes. And use a straight-edged tool just to redefine the markings in between the toes once you're happy. Yay! These little toes are done, and place them under the legs, and you can do that little tapping technique again if you like, and then use your preferred modeling tool to secure it onto the bottom of your baby dragon. Of course, you don't have to use any fancy pants modeling tools. You can simply use your hands, fingers, and fingernails, which are the best tools you can possibly have. I ended up thickening the tail just a smidge, and let's make some arms. So we're going to roll some coils about 6 millimeters in diameter and about 30 millimeters long. And I'm going to take off my gloves. You can see that they've gotten very, very dirty. This doesn't happen very often for this part of the tutorial. I have to though, because they are so very small, detailed and delicate. And I just started by rounding the edges off on the end and then just gave it a little pinch with my fingers. You may need to do it a couple of times and you can start to see a little wrist taking shape. There is no wrist at the moment. We are just about to make one. We'll do that by rolling it between the thumb and index finger like this, and you can now see it tapers in and then it comes out. On this section of the shoulder, do the same thing by tapping lightly to round it off, and that's the base of your arm. And here I'm marking with the needle tool where the fingers are going to be, and then I'm going to use a cutting knife to cut through that clay as well. And it's a little bit fiddlier with the fingers to round them out than what it was with the feet. And I push it around and I tap it and I use tools to help me get it into that rounded shape on all of the edges, and just try to be a little bit patient with this. It might take a little bit of time getting used to it. Sometimes that's kind of good to do while you're watching the telly or having a cup of tea, and you'll get there. You'll definitely get there. It just takes a little bit of practice and some perseverance. Yay, 2 arms are done. I'm just going to roughly place the arms against the body. It's ready to go. Let's move on to the head and roll a ball about 25 millimeters in diameter. And we're going to shape it into a slightly roundish pointed shape like you see here. And maybe you can connect with your dragon and think about its origin story while you're making it. Do they like to eat cupcakes? Where do they live? Do they have magical powers? And if so, how could you show this through your little baby dragon sculpture? What I'm doing now is tapping my index fingers on top of the head. As you can see there. Well, and I'm tapping the back of the head into a rounded shape just against the heel of my palm. It's flat at the bottom of the head in a rounded kind of triangular shape. To smooth out any little imperfections as you go. I'm wearing gloves, it's a little bit more difficult, but not impossible. And try to keep it symmetrical, which means that it's even on both sides, and at any kind of angle that you look at it, it looks very even. Now I'm using my thumbs to smooth the shape to help us make a little place, just a little bit of an indication of where we're going to pop the eyes in there. And making a center line here, and using a ball tool to mark a channel down the nose, and also using this ball tool to roughly mark in where we're going to position the eyes. I'm lightly tapping on his nose, his or her nose, on a little bit of an angle. And you can use a needle tool or a ruler to help to keep everything in line and evenly spaced. I'm using a ball tool here to mark the eyes. The distance between the eyes is about 15 millimeters. From the snout to the back of the head is about 25 millimeters. Put in the eye, grab a toothpick and bang some bacon bond on there. Make sure the whole of the bead is covered, and it's best to position it on a bit of a diagonal. Also make sure you push the eyes in at the same depth. Next, let's use a dark green clay to make the top of the eyelids. And I'm rolling a few small coils, and we're rolling coils with a fine point at the ends. Try to keep your hands clean, and then I pick up my coil with a needle tool so it's easier to place it on the front of the hole of the bead to cover up that hole. So lightly press it down and try your best to keep them as even as possible by looking at your little baby dragon head on all different angles. Roll 2 small coils just like we did before, but these are just a little bit smaller for the bottom eyelids. I'm doing this on a piece of paper to help absorb the oils so that I can get it really, really fine. Little trick there, really good one. So I've just taken my needle tool to pick it up and pop it under the eye, then lightly press it down. Then when I get to this point, I like to use a cutting blade to chop it right up and under. I hope your little dragon is going really, really well at this stage and you're having heaps of fun. I'm using a toothpick to apply bacon bond inside the hole for the gem and adding a red faceted gemstone. And using a little red coil to actually make the mouth, position it where you want it, and you can smooth it down on either side with your thumbs if you like. And I'm using a needle tool to blend that onto the rest of the baby dragon's head. Blend as much as you like with your preferred tools until you're happy. And I've got a silicone shaper tool to kind of sculpt the mouth a little bit more, get it into whatever shape that you would like. Then I use a 99% isopropyl alcohol just with a soft brush to smooth everything out. And you may like to do this as you go or at the end. Make any little adjustments that you'd like. You might even want to add teeth or a tongue. Now I'm making some nostrils with a dotting tool and then making a few other little adjustments. I've moved the gemstone a little bit and then I'm smoothing over everything with some of that isopropyl alcohol. And keep going until he's nice and neat. I'm popping the head on the body and then onto a tile so it's easier to work with the finer details. I'm using an armature wire and it's aluminium and super bendy. You can measure how long you want it to be, and I'm using it for extra strength as I sell mine in my Etsy shop. I'm pushing it down in line with the body and supporting the bottom while I do that. So just bang it straight in there, and let's also make sure that we cut off enough of the wire so it doesn't poke through the top of the head. We don't want that either. Apply a good amount of bake and bond and just gently pop the head on so that the chin sits a little bit forward, and we'll make him do perhaps a little bit of a dance. Here he is dancing away. Have a look at him or her from the side profile. All right, looks like someone's punched him in the face. Boom, take it. Ow. Anyway, so that's why I decided to make the nose a little bit bigger. And there's so many different head positions that you could put your little baby dragon in. Just have a little bit of a play around. He could be looking down a little bit or to the side. I'm planning to have a crystal in front of my baby dragon. However, that means wherever you pop the head, you may need to fill it in. As you can see, it's opened up the back a little bit and I need to fill that in with some clay because my baby dragon is looking slightly down at the little crystal ball that he is going to have. Oh my gosh, a crystal ball? Yes. And then just blend that head on and tidy it up with a little bit of the isopropyl alcohol. Now I'm making small ears, so rolling a ball and cutting it in half and then rolling those into 2 balls, then roll them into rounded teardrop shapes. And then you can indent the ear using any kind of tool that you would like. Then shape it into a little bit of a point by tapping the sides. Just about to do that now. There we go. I'm tapping the sides with my tool. Use whatever you like though. Okay, you might have big ears, small ears, weird looking ears, and cut them on a bit of an angle so they join on the head really easily. Place them onto the head in the position you like, and then blend them onto the head with your preferred modeling tool. I'm using a needle tool here, and I felt like I needed to kind of bulk out the back of the ear a little bit more. Here I am just bulking it out with some more clay, finishing it off, blending it in. That was a really important thing to do. I'm making some horns now, and I've taken the red colored clay and I'm making a bit of a chunky horn. And then we're going to move on to making a spirally type of horn, which is super fun. And it's just using the same color as the top of the eyelid, and we're rolling a thin coil. Then we're going to roll a thin coil in the red clay as well, exactly the same size. This is the really fun bit. Just push them together a little bit gently, and then just simply twist that around. Once you've twisted it, you can roll it again a little bit. If you see that there's any little areas that look like they need a little bit more of a twist, go ahead and do that in the same direction. And then roll it again to make it nice and smooth and even. And we're really wanting to focus on the end of the coil because we're going to put that into a point. You can see I'm twisting it a little bit for more of that twisty effect. And it's going to be a little bit more of a longer horn, so I'll give it more length. And this is so much fun. I love making these. And here's my collection of horns. We might not use all of them. First, I positioned the red horn on top of the head and blended that with a needle tool and smoothed it out with some alcohol as I placed each horn on. I didn't end up using a lot of these horns. I ended up going with a green color for the second one, and then instead of the red and green, I ended up going with gold and red. Just play around with lots of different shapes and sizes and colors until you're happy. And I'm blending them in and making sure that I've pressed them in as well as I can without distorting them further. You can definitely put a wire armature inside of your horns. And to finish them off, I'm putting on a little bit of bacon bond with a toothpick. And then I'm rolling a very, very fine thin coil just to kind of finish off the horns and give them more extra interest and detail. And I'm using a darker green clay to do that. You don't really need the bacon bond, but I like to add a little bit of it sometimes just for extra strength. And here's what it looks like on both sides. Because it works so well, I decided to put it on and around all of the rest of the horns too. As long as your clay is really well conditioned, you shouldn't have any trouble with the raw clay sticking to other raw clay. And you could also put the horns down the center of the forehead and down the back if you like. And here's what it looks like. I've got some more of the copper colored polymer clay here again, and I'm using a Sculpey circle cutter, which is about 25 millimeters in diameter, to make a circle. You could also do it yourself with a paper template and just cut around it with a cutting blade. And I'm just neatening up the edges a little bit and taking off the tile with the tissue blade. And then we're going to smooth out all of the edges with our fingers and make it nice and pretty because we have this marble that's 25 millimeters by to about 27 millimeters in diameter. And I'm going to use that. I'm just going to glue that little circle onto the marble. And if there's any imperfections on the marble, I've kind of found them and decided to put the piece of clay on top of them to hide them. And I applied some Sculpey Bacon Bond to both surfaces before sticking it on. I'm just doing it gently because I don't kind of want to like press too hard and distort that little circle too much. Bake for the recommended polymer clay brand's time, and here's a few ways that you can do it. You can do it on top of a Sculpey circle cutter, on top of a metal ring. You could even scrunch up some aluminium foil and press it down into a curved shape to hold the ball, or on top of a bed of cornstarch that you can rinse off after the bake. Let your polymer clay cool down. Now we're sticking it onto a bit of bronze coloured clay and shaping it into a little bit of a stand for the ball to sit on. So I've just rounded it a bit and then pushed it down with my thumb and taken it off the tile, applying Sculpey Bake and Bond and just popping the bowl on, and looks like it's going to sit very well there, which is great. Now I'm putting a little bit of texture around it so it gives it a little bit of a rocky kind of look. This is scoria, volcanic scoria from Victoria. Also, people use it to pumice their feet with it. But anyway, if you don't have this, just use a toothbrush or some sandpaper or something like that to give it a little bit more finesse. I've rolled a 18 karat gold coil and I'm wrapping it around, smoothing and finishing it, and I think it's looking pretty good. And then I'm putting a little bit of detail with a dotting tool around the edge, just pushing it in, very simple. Moving on to the crystal chips, I'm using a couple of different crystals. I didn't use the clear quartz ones that you can see here. I just went for the carnelian, the amethyst, and the green aventurine. Carnelian is good for creativity, green aventurine is good for soothing the emotions and the heart, and amethyst is good for balancing, clearing, and cleansing. If you were interested, I've done that all the way around and I'm really, really happy with how the crystals look. They're matching well with the color story we've got going on. It looks like I'm bending a towel here. Next, we're going to apply Sculpey Bake and Bond to the tummy. I'm putting a little bit of wire here into his belly to make sure it's as structurally strong and sound as it can be. And I'm going to clean it up with some isopropyl alcohol to get rid of any residue. I'm also putting a little bit of armature, that thin bendy wire, into the arms, neatening that up too. I'm giving the arm a bend and before I pop it onto the baby dragon, because I want it to be holding the ball. The arms are on and he's holding the little ball and he's kind of like predicting the future. Add Bake and Bond on the hands as well, so they stick to the ball. And I'm blending the shoulders here with a needle tool to neaten them up and using isopropyl alcohol as well. Then using a dotting tool to make indents for the toes, which is really quick and easy way to do them. Then I'm rolling some of the gold clay then using that same dotting tool again just to push them down and then curl them around and over the edge. I'm using a Kemper cutter tool here. You can get lots of different shapes. We're using a teardrop shape. There's a link in the description box below. A really handy tip making these scales is to place your thin sheet of clay on a tile or a sheet of glass. You can then run your finger down it or roll it on so that it sticks really well to the surface without pressing too hard and distorting it too much. And then because it's stuck onto the surface, when you cut out your shapes with the Kemper cutter and peel the clay back, you're more likely to get a larger amount of scales stuck onto the tile so that you can get to them and use them. Sometimes you might need to, it gets stuck in the actual Kemper cutter and you have to kind of like push it out on the side like I did there. And these are what the scales look like. And you see there's quite a few that have stuck to the tile, which is so much easier, trust me. Let's pop these scales, these beautiful polymer clay baby dragon scales on now. You can choose to pop it in whatever direction that you would like. I did it in this direction. You may like it to do it another way. I'm using a needle tool here to just pick them up. You can also use a silicone shaper tool. That could also work. And there's a little design that I've just gone for on the top of the head, coming to a little bit of a point. And then I'm going to continue to add those scales, adding them and making sure that I add them evenly, that the spaces between the scales are also as even as I can get them. And then way down around the back of the head. Then we're going to go down the rest of the back. You could also add different scales and things like horns and little decorations down the back as well. I'm going for a little bit of a stripe down the back. You could cover your entire baby dragon with scales if you liked. Maybe a love heart scale cutter would be super cute and you'd like to use that. Just use your imagination, just play around and see what works for you. And I'm pressing them down lightly as I go, as soon as I'm confident in the position that they're in. It's a simple, effective, and easy way to get scales where you don't really have to think too much about it. You can just pop them on and it's done. I'm going to go all the way down to the end of the tail. It's a little bit of a fancy tail at the end, and I'll show you more on that a bit later. You can see how amazing the detail is on your little baby dragon with these scales. I'm pressing them down, making sure that they've stuck pretty well and that they've bonded to the clay, which is really, really important to do. I have some of the gold clay and I'm rolling it into little coils and then chopping sections that I'm going to roll into balls. And we're going to need quite a few of these little balls because they're going alongside the spine, and I'm popping them on with a needle tool. You can always use a toothpick or something like that. And I've got my dotting tool. You can always substitute that with a bobby pin or a toothpick or a skewer. And you can actually pick them up really easily with the dotting tool, which is really cool, and pop them on. I feel really, really happy with how our polymer clay baby dragon is looking. I really like the gold against the green in the color scheme. Yeah. And you can see it's just so easy to work on him when he's stuck on the tile. He's not going to distort or get all squished and smoshed around. It means that you're not distorting your work, and yeah, it saves a lot of time and hassle. Anyway, I've got some polymer clay horns here and I'm going to use them for the tail, and I inserted in the wire so they're really nice and strong. Then I'm adding 3 of the red and gold onto the end of the tail. Then I'm going to get some gold and dark green polymer clay and putting those in between those spaces. And then some red and dark green and just kind of building up the tail, pressing it together nice and firmly. It's looking good. And some more red and gold polymer clay. These are a tiny bit smaller than the other ones that I put on before. And here's what it looks like. Ta-da! And rolling a few green balls of polymer clay, and they're going from smaller to larger, and I have 3 of them that are also going onto this tail. I'm putting them on top of the tail to hide those join marks there. No one can see what's underneath. I pressed them down with a dotting tool, and then I'm going to add a small glass bead. I've got my dotting tool here and I'm making indents in the dragon's hands. Add some gold polymer clay again and cutting claws. I'm curling the gold claws over just a tad, the same that we did with the feet. And then press them down with a dotting tool as we did before. In this shot, you can see them a little bit better. I'm turning around the baby dragon and you can see I'm pressing a few things down and then grabbing some purple polymer clay and adding more detail to the forehead. I've made the balls smaller for those middle ones, and then there's one right bang in the center just above the gem as a little highlight. You can see that detail there, and I've also added some on to the leg area on the side. I think it looks kind of cute, and I'm pressing them in with a dotting tool. Some balls are larger and some are smaller to give it a bit more variation, and I'm applying my bacon bond around the ball and adding a very fine coil of the purple colored polymer clay to tie that purple color in again. Make sure that it's well fastened on either side and that you blend it in. There's a couple of little purple dots on either side of the tail as well to keep the purple theme, and I'm cleaning up with the isopropyl alcohol again. I'm really going to town with this isopropyl alcohol. Just apply it wherever you need. I like to pay particular attention to the face and head area because it's the focal point of the piece, and make sure that he's looking good. And here he is. I've decided it's a he. Cute on the side. I'm really, really happy with him, and I'm hoping that this really slow shot and close up gives you all of the information that you need, because I know sometimes it's really frustrating in a tutorial when everything's like way too quick and you're like, what does that really look like in real life? I don't know. Well, here it is. I'm really, really showing him off so that you can see every tiny little detail and you can refer to it if you need to. I added a piece of amethyst crystal and I've wrapped the tail around it and put a lot of bacon bond on there. And as you'll remember, I have wire in the tail, so it's nice and strong. Now I'll show you how to do it with a marble on this blue baby dragon. It's exactly the same principle whether you use a crystal point or something else. The first step is curving the tail very gently into position. I've tried this one out. I'm just testing out this position and putting the marble in to make sure I'm happy with it. Apply some bacon bond on the contact points where the marble or object meets the polymer clay. Be pretty generous with the amount. Press the object in carefully, trying not to disturb all of the detailing of the tail. I'm liking his position. And you may even want to play around with it a little bit once you get it in there. You might change your mind. You want to put it somewhere else. Next, I'm using isopropyl alcohol on a fine brush to clean off any excess bake and bond. It can get a little bit streaky. You may need to repeat this a few times. I also find a fine tip cotton bud is a bit more absorbent and helps to get rid of the streaks. I've got my dotting tool and repairing a few areas. We've learned how to build up the tail. However, here it is really quickly again, building up the pointed coils and cleaning them with some more isopropyl alcohol as we go. As we learned earlier, just blending them with that dotting tool. Here comes the isopropyl alcohol. Placing some shorter spikes on top of the tail that also need to be blended in. And I'm repairing some of the detailing now and adding a small ball and squishing it on. And I made an impression with a bottle lid. I'm not sure if I want to keep that there though. Here is how he looks right now, showing you all of the different angles. Applying some bacon bond with the toothpick and adding a small glass bead to finish off the tail. And some isopropyl alcohol. Clean any last smudges or residue with a cotton tip. Before you put your baby dragon in the oven, poke some holes in his shoulders for the wings and bake for the recommended polymer clay brand's time. These are some resin wings that I've made. I'm not sure whether I'm going to do a tutorial on these or not. They're really quite involved and took me about 6 months to come up with the engineering and designs. Here's a different pair that I'm going to show you, which is a really quick and easy technique. This polymer clay wing version is a breeze to learn, and the best part is you likely already have all of the clay and materials you need. That's why I decided to go with this version for the tutorial. Take a look. It's super easy to customize the wings just the way you want by tweaking the design, size, and adding different features. I've got some more of the red colored polymer clay. It's only 1 to 2 millimeters thick. It's pretty thin. Just make it whatever thickness you want. Gently smooth the template onto your clay and grab your cutting blade and cut around the edge of the wing template. Here's a closer look. Flip the wing template over on to the opposite side, meaning you'll get 2 wings, just like this, 1 for each side. Cut it out and woo, magic. The wing's length is roughly 50 millimeters by about 25 to 28 millimeters wide. Yay, we have 2 wings. Grab some more of the aluminium wire and straighten it out. I'm using my fingers. I don't have a wire straightener. Use a jewelry wire cutter or something similar to chop 2 pieces of wire measuring around 90 millimeters in length. And we're aiming to cover about 65 millimeters of the wire with our clay. I have an extremely thin piece of green polymer clay. I'm putting the wire on top of it and just got a ruler there to check we're on track. I'm using a tissue blade to pick up the clay from the tile so I can roll it over the edge of the wire. I'm doing it quite firmly to make sure that there are no air bubbles trapped inside. Try to make the clay curl around the wire as tight as possible by pinching and pressing with your fingers. And once you've done that, carefully roll it over a smidge and cut off the rest of the polymer clay. Here's 2 of them. I'm pulling off the excess bits of clay on the end that don't have wire inside them. Here I'm putting them up against the ruler to make sure that I'm roughly on track and rolling them out to neaten them up. It's very, very easy to do. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see there's this little crease. Here's the close-up. You can easily, quickly, and simply smooth it out. I'm using my finger, and the reason why I twist off the end like this is to make sure the wire is right up to the end and the wing is strong. To tidy it up, I also fold it over and roll it a bit. Here they are. I like to work on a piece of copy paper for this part. I'm lightly holding the wing in place and pressing on some coarse grit sandpaper for some texture. Then I flipped them over and repeated it on the other side, and I'm adding even more texture with a texture sponge here. You can see I haven't lost the texture on the back. In a moment, I'm going to flip it over so you can see. Have a little peek. There you go. I'm slowly, carefully, and patiently bending the green wire into a curve that matches the curve at the top of the wing. Just keep going and making small adjustments as you go. Once you feel it matches up, press it down on top. Amazing! Here I'm pulling off excess polymer clay on the end and tidying it up. This is the part that's going to go into the little hole in his shoulder. I don't want the wings to look too clean and perfect, which is why I'm just going to beat them up a little bit, or you can experiment with tools and different details to give them your own character. And I've decided to beat them up on the top of the wings a little bit more. Here they are. They're matching up pretty well. I use my fingernail again and then soften the marks out by pressing on the texture sponge. They were just a little bit too deep, so I just softened them a little. Let's roll some green polymer clay coils and the ends into a point that will go down to match the points at the bottom of the wings. Place it very lightly on top until it's in the position you like and chop it under to remove the leftover coil. My dotting tool is great for gently blending it on. Here I'm repeating with the other coil and then blending that on as well. And guess what's coming up next? Oh my gosh, you'll never guess. Isopropyl alcohol, my best friend, just on a fine brush and smoothing those joins. I use a lot of isopropyl alcohol. Baking on a piece of paper will ensure the underneath of the wings stays matte and you won't get any uneven, shiny residue. We are baking in the oven again. These are very thin, so they won't take long to bake. And let's bake them on their own, just the wings. I like to keep the wings separate. That means if I need to pack it up or sell it or post it, you can without it being as fragile. However, you can bake the wings into your dragon and do another little bake if you prefer. Once they're out of the oven, you can trim the wire to size. Try to keep it as long as you can and fit them into the holes in your baby dragon's shoulders. If you forgot to poke the hole into your baby dragon, don't worry, you can simply use a drill very carefully and gently to drill a hole in there. Get yourself a toothpick and apply it inside the hole we made. Cover the wire part of your wing in bacon bond and put it into the hole. The wings are baked, which means you'll need to apply bacon bond to add raw clay to it, which we're doing now. Here's some more red clay. This dotting tool is helping me to spread the clay out, and we're wanting to join it on and hide any gaps. And we're also wanting to bulk it out for strength so that it sticks nice and firmly in place. So we're using the dotting tool to do this. You can use whatever tool that you like. And it can be a little bit fiddly and messy. It shouldn't be too much of a hassle if your clay is nice and well conditioned and soft so it spreads out nice and easily. Using the dotting tool to blend them on. And this silicone shaper tool is really amazing, or you could use your fingernail just to help flatten out the clay a little bit and just blend it on as seamlessly as you can. Spend as much time as you like with this process. I'm texturing the clay with the coarse grit sandpaper again so that it blends in. Clean up any little parts you feel need it and then turn it around, and you might like to fill in or tidy up some of the parts at the front as well. This will also help to keep the wing in place and strong and stable. I highly recommend you do it. Smooth it out with some isopropyl alcohol once you've finished adding whatever you feel like you need to. La, the wing is complete. And then you can repeat it on the other side. These are the wings we've learnt how to sculpt in this polymer clay tutorial. Looking pretty good. Hope yours turned out amazing. These other pairs are based on the templates in my Etsy shop. They are exactly the same proportions, and I'll probably show you more tutorials on how to make these at some point. I hope these give you some more inspiration. On this pair, I matched the purple on the head to the purple on the wings. This pair was from a texture stamp I cut around, or you could draw a design with a dotting tool. They're a tad smaller in size. Here's a pair of some of my own designs of resin wings that I have made especially for this little baby dragon. It's been such a pleasure making this tutorial for you. I really hope that you have success and that you love your baby dragon. I would love to hear how it went for you, so please put that down in the comments below if you like. This will help to inspire other people to make baby dragons as well. There'll be baby dragons everywhere, all over the world, and there'll be nothing anyone can do about it. I'll see you in the next tutorial, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye.